Hello everyone. Last time we have explained about the food web. Today we are going to explain the ecological pyramids. So there are three types of ecological pyramids, namely pyramid of number, pyramid of biomass, and pyramid of energy. So there are three types of ecological pyramids. The number, biomass and energy of organisms gradually decrease from the producer level to the consumer level, and these few steps of the trophic levels can be expressed in a diagrammatic way and are known as ecological pyramids. So, the ecological pyramids having a shape of pyramid or a triangle with a broad base and the narrow apex. Broad base and narrow apex. So this pyramid type of structure is formed when we'll consider or when we study the different trophic levels of the ecological systems, that is the food chain. For example, when we study the food chains with different feeding levels or the trophic levels. So the few steps, first, second, third, fourth or fifth, usually there are 3 to 5 trophic levels present in each of the food chain. So each of the food chain having the few steps or about 3 to 5 or 6. In some cases there are 6 trophic levels, but mainly there are 3 to 5 trophic levels of the food chain, and we'll consider or we'll explain them as a first trophic level, second trophic level, third trophic level, fourth or fifth trophic level, and each of the trophic level of the food chain can be explained with respect to the different type of feeding levels of the food chain representing the producers or primary consumers, secondary consumers, tertiary consumers, or herbivores, primary carnivores, secondary carnivores, tertiary carnivores, or the top carnivores. So these are the different trophic levels of the food chain with respect to the availability of the different species of organisms may be in the form of producers or consumer category. So the number, that is number of producer, for example, number of plants, total number of plants present in a unit area at a particular time, that is a number of the plants or the producers. Then biomass means the total volume or the weight with respect to the total quantity of the plant material or the grass, for example, that will form a total biomass. And energy, that is actual energy, that is the ability to do work. Energy is defined as the ability to do work. So the energy in the form of chemical energy, for example, or the food or the nutrients, which are the sources of energy, and thus the ecological pyramids can be explained with respect to the number, biomass, and the energy. So there are three type of or three criterion or three categories can be uh, used to explain the ecological pyramids. So the number, biomass and energy of the organisms gradually decrease from the producer level to the consumer levels, and these few steps of the trophic levels, that is producer or consumer levels, these few steps of the trophic levels, that is from 3 to 5 number, can be expressed in a diagrammatic way are known as the ecological pyramids. So ecological pyramid is a graphical presentation. Ecological pyramid with a broad base and narrow apex or having shape of triangle. So ecological pyramid is a graphical presentation of the number, biomass and the energy of the successive trophic level of an ecosystem. Charles Elton in 1927 who first used this term, that is ecological pyramid. In the ecological pyramids, the producers form the base and the final consumer occupies the apex. Ecological pyramids are of three types. There are three types of ecological pyramids such as pyramid of number, pyramid of biomass and the pyramids of energy. So, first we'll explain the pyramids of number. Now you might have cleared the definition of the ecological pyramid. What is the definition of ecological pyramid? The number, biomass and energy of organisms gradually decrease from producer level to the consumer level. The number, biomass and energy of the organisms gradually decrease from the producer level to the consumer level, and these few steps of the trophic levels, that is producer, primary, secondary, tertiary, consumer trophic levels, can be expressed in a diagrammatic way and are known as ecological pyramids. So ecological pyramid is a graphical presentation of the number, biomass and energy of the successive trophic levels of an ecosystem. Ecological pyramid is just a graphical presentation of the number, biomass and energy of the successive trophic levels of an ecosystem. Charles Elton in 1927 who first used the term as a ecological pyramid. In the ecological pyramids, the producers form the base and the final consumer occupies or forms the apex of the ecological pyramid. Then ecological pyramids are of three types such as pyramid of number, pyramid of biomass and pyramids of energy. So first we'll explain the pyramids of numbers. They show the relationship between producers, herbivores and carnivores at successive trophic levels in terms of number. So while defining the pyramids of number, we'll have to consider the number of organisms in each successive trophic level. For example, the number of plants, number of herbivores, number of carnivores, number of secondary carnivores, number of tertiary carnivores or a top carnivores. So here we are going to consider only the number of the producers, herbivores, carnivores at a successive trophic levels in terms of number only. So, the number of individuals at the trophic levels decreases from the producer level to the consumer level, as we have defined, as already we have defined that the number of individuals, even the number, then biomass and energy, all the three criteria, all the three features or the properties of the ecological pyramid decreases from the producer level to the consumer levels. So in a pyramid of number also, the number of individuals at the trophic level decreases from the producer level to the consumer level. The number of producers in an ecosystem is very high. If we observe, any ecosystem, maybe aquatic or terrestrial ecosystem, you just see the number of producers of the plant is higher in any ecosystem or is high. The number of herbivores is a less or a lesser. The number of herbivores or the animals which are feeding onto the plants are less than the producers. Means the producers or the plants are in a highest number. Then herbivore organisms, they are lesser than the producers with respect to number. Similarly, the number of carnivores is again lesser than the herbivores. Similarly, the number of carnivores is lesser than herbivores. Means there is a base, there is a broad base. In case of pyramid of number, so ultimately the graphical presentation of the pyramid of number shows the upright pyramid with a broad base having large number of or highest number of producers of the plants, then less number, somewhat less number of herbivores representing second trophic level, and again the carnivores may be primary or secondary or tertiary carnivores, their number also decreasing at each successive trophic level, and thus the pyramid of number having a shape of triangle or a pyramid with a upright pyramid having broad base and narrow apex. So the number of herbivores is lesser than the producers. Similarly, the number of carnivores is lesser than the herbivores. For example, in croplands, the producers or the crops are more in number, and the grasshoppers feeding on the crop plants are lesser in number. You just consider any crop field, for example, jawar or bajri or wheat or rice. So you consider any cropland where there is a particular type of crop or the plants acts as a producers. So number of plants of the particular crop is high, and the number of grasshoppers which are feeding onto these plants or the particular crop is lesser in number. The frogs feeding on the grasshoppers are still lesser in number. The snakes feeding on the frogs are still fewer in a number. Means the number of plants in the crop field is highest, then number of grasshoppers feeding onto these crop plants is lesser. Again, the number of frogs which are feeding or eating the grasshopper is again lesser. Again, the number of snakes which are feeding onto the frogs are again less in number or few in number. That is, crop plants which are serving as a producer, then grasshopper serves as the primary consumer or the herbivore, then frogs serves as a primary carnivore, then snakes serves as a secondary carnivore. So in a crop field or in a ecosystem, in a terrestrial ecosystem, we can take an example of crop plants where the producer or the crops are more in number, the grasshoppers feeding on the crop plants are lesser in number, the frogs feeding on to the grasshoppers are still lesser in number, and the snakes feeding on frogs are still fewer in number. So ultimately, the pyramid of number having a shape of pyramid with a upright position, that is with a broad base and a narrow apex with a different trophic levels, and in each of the trophic level the number of organisms is decreasing. The number of organisms is continuously decreasing from producer level to the consumer level. In pond ecosystem, the number decreases in a following order. We can just explain the number of the organisms, number of the organisms of different trophic levels of the pond ecosystem. So phytoplankton, the number of phytoplankton is always more in a pond ecosystem. There are large quantity or large number of phytoplanktons which are consumed than by the zooplankton which are having lesser number. So number of zooplankton is lesser than the phytoplanktons. Then fishes which are feeding on to the zooplankton is again lesser, and the snakes which are feeding on to the fishes is again few in number. So ultimately the number of organisms, ultimately the number of organisms of each successive trophic level is decreasing even in a terrestrial or terrestrial ecosystem or the pond ecosystem. The number of organisms or the number of individuals decreasing and forming a pyramid, the number of organisms decreasing from producer level to the consumer level in a successive trophic levels of the food chain, and representing reduction or a decrease in a number of organisms in a through a successive trophic levels. So number of organisms decreasing through successive trophic levels from producer to consumers and representing a pyramid with a broad base and a narrow apex. Then second type of ecological pyramid, that is pyramid of biomass. Pyramid of biomass. So biomass refers to the total weight or total quantity of living matter or living organisms or the species, whatever the number of living organisms present in a respective habitat or in a respective ecosystem that can be counted or considered as a biomass. So biomass refers to the total weight or a quantity with respect to total weight or quantity of living material or the living organisms per unit area. Therefore, the pyramid of biomass, therefore, the pyramid of biomass is to weigh individuals in each trophic level, instead counting their number. In a previous example, or in a pyramid of number, in a pyramid of number, we'll have to count the actual number of organisms present in each of the trophic level. But in case of pyramid of biomass, we'll have to weigh, we'll have to measure, or we'll have to weigh the total weight of the organisms, total weight of organisms at each trophic level. At each trophic level means we'll have to count the weight, we'll have to count the weight, we'll have to measure the weight, total weight of the organisms of each trophic level instead of counting their number. This would give us a pyramid of biomass. So this will give us a pyramid of biomass, that is the total weight of all organisms at a given level. Total weight, total weight of all organisms at a every or at a given trophic level or at each trophic level, will have to measure or will have to count the total weight of all organisms at each trophic level. So in an ecosystem, the biomass decreases from the producer level to the consumer level. So the pyramid of biomass, the pyramid of biomass also appears to be upright in a position, that is with a broad base and a narrow apex, similar to pyramid of number. So pyramid of biomass also shows decrease of biomass from producer level to the consumer level. In most land ecosystems, the pyramid of biomass has a large base. In most of the land ecosystems, the pyramid of biomass has a of primary producers, large base of primary producers or the plants with a small trophic level perched on the top, with a small trophic level perched or sitting on the top. Means in most land ecosystems, the pyramid of biomass have a large base with primary producers. There may be secondary producers also, which are occurring onto the top of primary producers. So, a small trophic level can be perched on the top of the primary producers. So, in most land ecosystems, the pyramid of biomass has a large base of primary producers with a small trophic level perched on the top. Means there may be smaller plants, there again the tall plants or the medium sized or with a medium height plants. So that can have the even producers can also have 1, 2 or 3 trophic levels, and that can act or serve as a producers. So producers may have one trophic level or the two trophic levels, means may be primary producers or a secondary producers. So in most land ecosystems, the pyramid of biomass has a large base of primary producers with a small trophic level perched. Perching means sitting or present on the top of primary producers, means there may be a secondary producer or a secondary trophic level of the producers. In grassland and the forest, in grassland and forest, there is a gradual decrease in a biomass of organisms at successive levels from the producers to the consumers or to the top carnivores. Thus, pyramids are thus, the pyramids of biomass are upright. Upright means with a broad base, having large quantity of biomass of the producer category. Maybe primary producers having grass, and the secondary producers may be trees. So this will form a biomass of producer with a large quantity or weight or a biomass with a broader base of the pyramid, and above which there are consumer trophic levels, may be herbivores, carnivores or the top carnivores, and thus the pyramid of biomass is also appears in an upright position with a broad base, of the producers with respect to its quantity or weight. So total weight of the primary producers or total weight of secondary producers may be grasses or may be the trees that will collectively form a producer trophic levels. So the weight of which will decreasing from producer level to the consumer level. So ultimately the number of herbivores which are feeding on to the producers either in a uh, land ecosystem or grassland ecosystem or the forest ecosystem, they shows the broad base and narrow apex. Even in a pond ecosystem also, the producers with a large quantity and a consumer with a smaller and smaller quantity, representing the pyramid, upright pyramid with a broad base and the narrow apex. So in a grassland and forest, there is a gradual decrease in a biomass of organisms at successive levels from the producer to the top carnivores, means passing through the successive trophic levels of the herbivores primary consumers, secondary consumers, then carnivores or primary, secondary carnivores, and the top carnivores. So, in grassland and forest, there is a gradual decrease in biomass of organisms at successive levels from the producers up to the top carnivores. Thus, pyramids are upright. Thus, pyramids of biomass are upright. Biomass, thus pyramids are upright. In case of pond or aquatic ecosystems, in case of pond or aquatic ecosystem, as the producers are small organisms. In case of, already we have explained, the pyramid of number, that is also upright. And the pyramid of biomass, that is also upright in a land or forest or a grassland ecosystems. But in a pond or aquatic ecosystem, the condition is different. The producers are small aquatic plants or the organisms or the phytoplanktons or the aquatic algae will have less quantity of biomass or the weight, and their biomass is very least or less, and this value shows gradual increase towards the apex of the pyramid, and thus pyramid become inverted in a shape. Getting it? In a pond ecosystem, what happens? In case of terrestrial ecosystems, maybe cropland, maybe forest, maybe grassland, where the number and quantity, that is number and quantity, that is number and biomass of the producer is higher in a with respect to higher number or with respect to larger quantity or the biomass with respect to its weight, that is higher, and thus the energy, the pyramid of energy, pyramid of number and the pyramid of biomass, they are upright in position, that is with a broad base and the narrow apex. But in the pond ecosystem or aquatic ecosystem, the condition is opposite to that of the pyramid of number and the pyramid of biomass in the terrestrial or the land ecosystems. So, in a pond or aquatic ecosystem, as the producers are small organisms, their biomass is least. So, collectively, the biomass of the phytoplanktons or the aquatic algae is very less. But the organisms or the consumers feeding on to the producers or aquatic producers of the aquatic ecosystems, that is phytoplanktons or the aquatic algae, that is in a large quantity, for example fish. So the biomass is least or very less, and this value shows gradual increase towards the apex. The value shows the biomass is least. In case of pond or aquatic ecosystem, the producers are small organisms or the phytoplanktons and the aquatic algae, and their biomass is very less or very least in a quantity, and this value shows the gradual increase towards the apex of the pyramid, and thus pyramid becomes inverted in shape. So, biomass is in a least quantity and consumers quantity increasing to the successive trophic levels of the food chain in the pond or aquatic ecosystem. Getting it? So, in case of condition is inverse. In case of pond or aquatic ecosystem, with respect to the biomass, the producer's biomass. So, quantity or the weight of the producers or the aquatic plants and the phytoplankton due to their smaller size is very least, biomass is very least, and this value shows gradual increase towards the apex of the pyramid, and thus pyramid becomes inverted. Instead of having upright pyramid, in case of aquatic ecosystem, the pyramid is inverted. The pyramid becomes inverted in shape because of least quantity of biomass of the producers in a pond or aquatic ecosystem. So, we will explain these things in a diagram. See the ecological pyramids, the left hand side diagram representing the ecological pyramid, that is pyramid of number, and right hand side uh, image showing pyramid of biomass. So see in a first figure or left side figure, you see there are uh, pyramid of numbers, that is individuals per unit area, individuals per unit area in a different kinds of ecosystem or food chains. So there are different diagrams. In a first image, there are four type of diagrams or four type of pyramids of number. In a first figure or in a first photograph, there are four figures. In a first image, there are four figures, left side. There are four figures, and these four figures showing four different types of the ecosystems or four different type of food chain with a pyramid of number. So pyramid of number in a different kinds of ecosystem. In figure A, the grassland ecosystem. In a figure A, we can see the grassland ecosystem where the producers are the plants with the highest number, then primary consumers, that is herbivores with a less number or lesser number, then secondary consumers like fish, that is a carnivore, then tertiary consumers are again top carnivores. So in a grassland ecosystem, in a grassland ecosystem, the producers with the highest number, primary consumers or the herbivores with a lesser number, then secondary consumers or the carnivores with again lesser number, and tertiary consumers are the top carnivores or maybe secondary or tertiary carnivores. The number of organism is few or fewer, and thus the pyramid of number in a grassland ecosystem. Thus, pyramid of number in a grassland ecosystem is upright with a broad base of producer and a narrow apex of the consumers, maybe herbivores and then the carnivores or top carnivores. Then figure B shows the pyramid of number of pond ecosystem, where in a producer we can see in a pond ecosystem the producers, that is again in a large number. So number is large even though they are having smaller size. The size, we are not considering the size, we are discussing about the pyramid of number. So number of producers, that is phytoplanktons or the aquatic algae, is a vast or is a highest. Then primary consumers or the herbivore organisms may be smaller invertebrates and the fish, herbivore fish, which are feeding onto the phytoplanktons and algae. Their number is fewer than the producers. Then secondary consumers or the carnivores, their number is again lesser than the number of herbivores. And the tertiary consumers or the carnivores or the big fish or carnivore fish, their number is again few. So in a figure B, the pyramid of number in a pond ecosystem is also upright with a broad base and the narrow apex. Then the figure C, you can see the left hand side image, figure C, representing the forest ecosystem, representing the forest ecosystem. In a forest ecosystem, the there are again two types. There are two types in a uh, forest ecosystem where we can see the producers, that is the trees. large number of trees, producers. Then the elephants or deers, there are so many primary consumers or the herbivores or fruit eating birds also, and they form primary consumers feeding onto the producers or the plants in the forest ecosystem. Then secondary consumers or a carnivores, these may be the snakes or the wolf, foxes, and then finally the tertiary consumers or the carnivores like lion. So figure C representing the forest ecosystem and figure D indicates the food chain of the parasitic food chain. Figure D representing the parasitic food chain, which is having the inverted pyramid of number. So these are the different type of pyramid of number. So in case of forest ecosystem, figure C, you just observe the figure C. The number of tree is lesser. The number of trees, large trees, is lesser, but number of primary consumers or the herbivore is more. So with a very narrow base, then broader portion of the primary consumers or the herbivores may be elephants, deers, and different herbivore animals together with the fruit eating birds which are occurring on the trees in the forest, and thus number of primary consumer is more than the producers in a forest ecosystem, and again there is a reduction in a number of the uh, primary primary carnivores or secondary consumers and the tertiary consumers or the secondary carnivores. So number is again reducing. So this pyramid is having a different shape. It is not like a pyramid. So pyramid of number in the forest ecosystem is having different shape. That is very narrow base, broader second trophic level of the herbivore or the primary consumers, and again reduction in a number in a successive trophic levels of the consumers, that is secondary consumer and the tertiary consumers. In a figure D, you just see in a figure D what it indicates: the parasitic food chain. The parasitic microorganisms and soil animals are not included in a uh, forest ecosystem. The diagram showing different shape of the pyramid of number in a forest ecosystem, because there is no involvement of the parasitic microorganisms and the soil animals present in the forest ecosystem. Only trees are considered. Only the trees or the plants of the forest ecosystem are considered, and that's why the shape of the pyramid is different and is not like a pyramid of number of the uh, grassland ecosystem or the pond ecosystem, but is different due to the lack of involvement of the parasitic organisms or the soil animals in the forest ecosystem. In a figure D representing parasitic food chain, where the base there are producers, that is plants, then herbivores number is increasing, again parasites on herbivores, again number of parasites in the herbivore animal increasing, again hyperparasitism, that is hyperparasites on lice and bugs, that is bacteria, fungi, actinomycetes. So these are the increased number of the parasitic organisms, and this parasitic food chain shows the inverted pyramid of number. Single tree producer, then herbivores increased number, then parasites on the herbivores, again increased number, and again hyperparasites on the parasites of the herbivores representing again larger number. So the number pyramid of number in a parasitic food chain is continuously increasing at each successive trophic level from producers to the parasites. So, this is the parasitic food chain representing the inverted pyramid of number. Then just see on right side there are three figures representing pyramid of biomass. Pyramid of biomass, that is dry dry weight per unit area in different kind of ecosystem such as grassland, forest and pond. So the figure A shows the biomass, pyramid of biomass of grassland ecosystem where the number of producers or the quantity of biomass is higher. Then herbivores representing the mouse or rabbit with a lesser number. Then carnivores, snakes or the frogs, that is again lesser number, and eagle or hawk like birds, again few number. So pyramid of biomass in a grassland ecosystem is a upright with a broad base and narrow apex. Then the pyramid of biomass in forest ecosystem producer trees, large number of trees in forest. Then herbivores, that is uh, deers, elephants, giraffe or camel. So these are the animals with a lesser number than the producers, and the carnivores, that is the snakes, then foxes, lions, tigers, etc. The number is again few. So in a forest ecosystem, the pyramid of biomass is also upright with a broad base and the narrow apex at each successive level, that is in a decreasing order with respect to the biomass at each successive level from producer to the consumer level. And but in the pond ecosystem, the pyramid of biomass is again inverted. You can see the figure C, the right side image. You see the right side image and the figure C, where the producers are in a smaller quantity. Even though the number is vast or large, but quantity of biomass is very least or less with respect to pond ecosystem. In a pond ecosystem, the producers are having a large number, but the weight or the biomass is very least. This least biomass is eaten up or consumed by the herbivores of the pond ecosystem with a somewhat increased number or larger number than the larger quantity than the producers. So herbivores with a somewhat large quantity. For example, fish, smaller fish, herbivore fish, which are feeding on to the phytoplanktons, having larger biomass than the producers. And again, the small fishes or the biomass of the small fish can be eaten up or consumed by the carnivore fish, which is again having a larger size or more biomass or the weight with respect to biomass. The quantity of the or the total biomass of the carnivore fish is again larger than the small herbivore fish, and thus the pyramid of biomass in a pond ecosystem is again inverted, representing narrow apex and the broad base of the successive trophic levels of the food chain, ranging from producer to herbivore to carnivore, or from producer to consumers. The biomass is increasing in a pond ecosystem, but biomass is decreasing in a grassland and forest ecosystem. Biomass is decreasing in a grassland and forest ecosystem, but biomass is increasing in a pond ecosystem. Then this is about the pyramid of number and pyramid of biomass. So today we'll stop here. Next time we'll explain remaining type of ecological pyramid, that is pyramid of